Hi there. This series is how to be a better field target shooter in 15 minutes. And what I'm doing is talking to different field target shooters from across the country, taking a topic and interviewing them and getting some tips and suggestions for you so you can become a better field target shooter. Tonight's topic is the Troyer scale, and I thought it would be a good idea to talk to Brad Troyer. The scale is named after him about what the Troyer scale is and how it's used and why it's important and what we can learn from it. Brad is from Alabama. He's been shooting field targets since 1994. He shoots WFTF piston and WFTF PCP, and I've seen him shoot piston many times. He's an excellent shot. He knows his stuff. So we're going to talk to Brad Troyer now about the Troyer scale. So hello, Brad. How you doing this afternoon?
I'm doing fine. How are you?
Good. I appreciate you taking the time to share some of your knowledge and wisdom and sharing some of this with the field target community. And when I first started shooting field target, I started hearing people refer to what's the Troyer scale on this course, and I had no idea what that was. And eventually, I did find the rule book and sort of understood a little bit better about what the Troyer scale is. But I'm sure you can educate me even more about that. But if you would give us a quick explanation of what the Troyer scale is and how it kind of came to be.
Okay. So I started shooting field target, and my first match was in 1994. Got the opportunity to shoot with Rodney Boyce down in Florida. And he convinced me to go to Baton Rouge the following spring for my first nationals. And I ended up taking second place in standard piston class, which was the class of the time. And driving home, I thought, if I'm going to get good at this, I really need to shoot more. So I started a club at my gun club that I was a member of. And by September of 95, held my first match. And after about a year, I realized that the matches I was setting up, either they would be too easy or they would be too hard. I had no way of really gauging the difficulty of the course.
Right.
And so I thought, I'm an engineer. I bet I could come up with a way to mathematically figure out a difficulty rating. And so I sat down and started playing with some numbers, and I realized if I took the kill zone of the target, the distance of the target, and divided by the kill zone size, it would give me a relative number. And I thought, well, 1 inch at that time, 1 inch at 30 yards was pretty average. If that was closer, it'd be easier. If it was further out, it would be harder. And so I started using that. I made up a spreadsheet, and I would plan my matches using the spreadsheet, calculate the difficulties. And I realized pretty quick, standing. We didn't do kneeling at the time, but standing wise, that was messing up my difficulty. So I had to put in a factor for that to make it a little more difficult, because a half inch at 20 yards was pretty easy until you put the standing difficulty.
Right.
And so I used it for a number of years, and I planned out the 99 nationals using it. And I started telling people about it at that time, and kind of got it out there in the public domain. And it started becoming a little more popular. People started liking it and using it. And then Ray Apellis contacted me and wanted to help me kind of further develop it. And him and I worked through it for a couple years. And we between him and I, we figured out the difficulty ratings, the difficulty factors for standing, kneeling, and those kinds of things. And that went on, and it got used like that. And we realized that environmental conditions had some effects on the difficulty, and so we added in some of those things for it, and it's pretty much matured into what it is today. And really, it was developed as a way for the match director to know how difficult their course was that they were setting up.
Right.
I had never really intended it to be used for setting comparisons between different matches and things, because you can do that, but it's never really exactly right, because the wind conditions and all that are different from place to place. But it gives you a relative feel for how difficult the course is going to be.
Right.
And so In the mid 2000s, when Leo Duran came on the scene, he dubbed it the Troyer scale. I never called it that. I just called it a difficulty rating system.
Right.
And it just took on a life of its own, and it's turned into what it is now.
Yeah, I was kind of wondering what it's like to have a difficulty scale named after you. So that's kind of
Yeah,
funny.
it's weird. I mean, I've had people come and say, Troyer is like, is that the difficulty rating system that we use? It's like, yeah, that's me. I'm guilty as charged.
Yeah. So yeah, it because these different matches, they're in different locations, different places. The environment, it does allow for light, for lighting conditions, and also some weather.
Yeah.
But you're not going to have the exact same conditions at different matches.
No.
But it, like you said, it is a guide to, as much as we can, to compare. I know it wasn't intended to compare matches or field target courses, but it is a guide to set it up and understand how difficult it is. So, there's two different ways I see whenever you hear about the Troyer scale, as a shooter and then as a as a competitor, but also as a match director. So, as a shooter, whenever I approach a match, whether it's a Grand Prix or a Nationals or just a local match, should I be really concerned about the Troyer as a shooter, or should I just shoot and focus on the target, or what do you think?
Yeah, I wouldn't worry too much about the difficulty. As a shooter, everyone's got to shoot the targets that are there, regardless of how easy or hard they are. And it can sometimes psych you out if you know what the difficulty is. If it comes in at a 35 and people are like, "Oh, this is really hard," but even a 32 or a 33 can be difficult if it's set up right.
Right.
One thing that hasn't made it into the difficulty rating system is when I set my matches up, I also calculate the standard deviation of the difficulty. And I typically go for a 9 to 11 on the standard deviation. And what that means is that you don't have all of the targets at the same difficulty level. You'll have some easy ones, you'll have some moderate ones, and then you have some hard ones.
Right.
I've shot matches where they're all hard. Alan Zaddy was famous for that, setting up like 45 difficulties, and all of them are hard. But what I find is that when you have them all the same difficulty, people start getting used to how hard it is, and it doesn't become as much of a factor. And so by varying the difficulty, you really do get more of a variety in it. When you come to a hard one, it makes the shooter psych out a little bit more.
Right.
The pucker factor. But
right.
As a shooter, you don't really care. I mean, you can tell when you shoot through the course whether it was hard or not. But and it really is more for the match director to make sure that they don't make it too hard.
Right.
We had a Nationals in Kentucky where it was before they had actually put limits on how hard the courses can be. I mean, it was like a 40 or more, and people were just complaining, it's like, this is just too hard.
Right.
And it can be. So.
Yeah, I like what you said too about having some variety, and I'm thinking of it more of the approach of you've got different levels of shooters who are there, maybe some new shooters. I think it's healthy for the sport to have some targets that are maybe not as hard, because not everybody can hit that 45-yard target with a small kill zone. You need to have that out there, but at the same time, if you've got some shooters who are still developing the skill, I think it's healthy to have some targets that they can knock down. So, and I personally do not try to think about the Troyer rating at all whenever I'm shooting, because like you said, I don't want it to be in my head. I don't even think about it. But it's definitely important for the match director. So maybe are there some best practices for match directors with the Troyer scale, some things to do, some things not to do. You just suggested having a bit of a spread there from easier to harder ones, but are there some things to do and some things not to do regarding the scale?
Well, philosophy, difficult setting up a course, the difficulty, the philosophy that I use is you want about a third of the targets to be moderate, straightforward to moderate,
Mm-hmm.
a third to be moderate to hard, and then a third that are really hard.
Mm-hmm.
And what that does is that it allows everybody to hit some. And most will hit, the top shooters will hit most of them, and then you use the really hard ones to kind of separate the pack.
Right.
Everybody wants to go to a match. Everybody wants to, shoot and knock down targets. Generally speaking, no matter what the difficulty, you're going to have the same kind of grouping of people at the top, whether it's really hard or fairly easy.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you make it all really hard, all you're doing is lowering all the scores down, basically. So what you really want is you want to set your course up so that the top shooters are going to shoot 95 to 98% of the targets.
Mm-hmm.
And that allow the new shooters or maybe the younger or less experienced shooters to hit more targets. They'll feel good about it and they'll want to come back.
Right.
Yeah.
That's very good. So yeah, I've learned some things. Are there any other tips or suggestions that you have, whether you're a shooter or you're a match director with the Troyer scale? Any last thoughts you have on that?
Sure. Well, there again, just in general, as far as setting up courses, things that I like to do is, there's lots of little tricks that you can play as a match director. To take a course that isn't maybe as hard as the nationals or a worlds type course, and make it a little more mentally difficult. One of the things I like doing is you put a really hard target out and then follow it up with a really easy target and vice versa.
Right.
So you might put an inch and a half at 25 yards and follow it up with a 3/4 inch at like 34 yards or something of that
Mm-hmm.
nature.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what that does is if it's an easy target first, you focus on that target. It seems real easy. You kind of relax a little bit. Then you hit that hard target and you have that pucker factor.
Mm-hmm.
And vice versa. You get that hard target first and you're really focusing on it and you're trying to do good and you hit it and you're great. And then you loosen up a little bit. And if you don't focus on the next easy target, you can miss it.
Yep.
Another common thing that I like to do is I'll put a 10-yard target out that's not terribly difficult and then put one at 25 yards. Or in that range, because what that is you're going to put that 10-yard target out and you're going to typically the shooter has to dial way up. And if they don't watch what they're doing, instead of going back down to their 0 point, which is usually in the 25 to 30-yard range, they'll dial up and be a revolution out. And so they really have to watch that.
Mm-hmm.
I do like having targets up close, just from the standpoint, I want to make sure that the guys that are coming are prepared. They've done their dope and they know where all their distances are and that sort of thing. But I really do like the long targets personally as well. And shooting in the wind, and that's in the world competition, it's all about knowing how to shoot in the wind.
Yeah.
The scopes have gotten to the point now where you're focusing and getting your range isn't that as hard as it used to be. And the wind really separates the top shooters from those that score in the mid range. So
yeah.
And variety is always fun. Shooting up, shooting down, making neat targets. A couple of the things I did in the '99 nationals that were really fun. I made a fixture with a rat on the end. It was basically just a 4 foot long 2x4,
Mm-hmm.
and I put the rat right on the end, and then I scooted up a blue trash can. So he was sitting at the very back of the trash can, and I put trash out around it.
Yeah.
So he had to actually shoot into the trash can. I also had a couple of vultures, and I found this little stuffed animal toy at a thrift shop and put a little ketchup on him and made it look like he was eating on him. And that particular year, I was shooting at we were using a sporting clays range, and we had a nice pond out there. So I had made a 3 foot alligator target out of the wood target design that I have on my website. And so I made a 6 foot target of alligator target. And so I had the 6 foot target across the pond at 50 yards and had Rick Stoutenberg make me a little alligator head. And I put him in the pond. So when you shot it, the head would go underwater.
Oh, wow.
And then I put the 3 foot target on 3 foot alligator on the right side of the pond. So it was a fun setup. They had a 4-story sporting clays tower that I put a bird target at the very top.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so when you're shooting at an extreme angle, and when you're
Yeah.
looking at the bird, there's nothing but blue sky behind it. So
Yeah.
it's just fun stuff like that. It's fun to put out interesting targets and do neat things with it.
Yeah.
But that's part of the being a match director that I've really enjoyed. And I was very lucky in my early years to be living so close to Rodney Boyce. He helped me a lot. He taught me a lot about what I do, and I became friends with Jack and Terry Kirkendall. And between the three of them, they mentored me a lot and taught me a lot about field target and
Mhm.
the original intent of the rules and things that they had. So
Right. Right.
yeah, it's a lot of fun. I really enjoy that part of it. I like working on the targets too.
Yeah. Yeah. I like the creative targets at the Tar Heel Club here in North Carolina. Chris Berry, he sets up some like the rat in the trash, or he's got a
Mhm.
rat in a grill. He's got a mannequin, and I mean he really gets creative, and it's something new every time. It's interesting, and
Yeah,
I like that too. Um, yeah, thanks again for talking to us this
sure.
afternoon. Any last minute thing or last things you want to leave us with?
No, I mean, other than just practice, that's the best thing you can do for that.
Yeah.
Don't worry about the difficulty. Everyone has to shoot it. Just
Yep, and
focus on the target and relax, breathe, and squeeze, man.
yep, and you can find the Troyer scale is in the AFTA rules. You can find it at AFTA.org. And one thing I use it for, I have my own practice course here at my home, and so I've used it to make some of those targets. You know what I know is going to be about the limit, and
Mhm.
so for my own practicing, I've used that because I want to be prepared when I go to a Cajun or a Grand Prix or the Nationals. You know, I'm prepared. Um, so yeah, I encourage everybody to check that out. So thanks for joining us tonight. I appreciate all the
Right.
information. Thanks, bro.
All right, thank you.
All right.